Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking your time out to attend this webinar today. I'm Jason Teo, the sales consultant for the Industry Solutions channel for CCAT Technologies. Today, we have with us Jerome Retief, who will be sharing with us the topic on breaking silos in an organization and improve product development efficiency by 30%. Jerome had several experiences in France and overseas before he joined Dassault Systems 8 years ago in Paris headquarters marketing division to serve the corporate image of the company. Based in Singapore since 2012, he supported the development of educational and research programs to build a strong pipeline of skillful engineers across Asia Pacific South. Through an extensive network of local industry partners, he is now managing sales across Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand. Dassault Systems' strong legacy and knowledge in 11 industries, combined with partners' local presence and skills, ensure the delivery of cutting-edge industry-specific solutions. Holding a master's degree in business management from La Rochelle Business School, Jerome graduated with majors in marketing, international business development, and logistics. Without further ado, let's now have Jerome to share with us his message. Jerome, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well, Jason?
Yes, Jerome, I can hear you well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join the webinar. Thank you, Jason, for the introduction. So as mentioned, I'm based here in Singapore, where it's our regional headquarters for a few countries, including ASEAN and Australia, New Zealand. While currently in Singapore, I'm based at home, like most people. So that's also why we increase the number of webinars to try to share relevant information with you all. So thank you for taking the time, and hopefully we could resume face-to-face meetings pretty shortly. So Dassault System, we've been in Singapore for over 20 years now, and we are supported by a strong network of partners, including CCAT. So on the agenda today, we'll try to keep it simple. We have three main items, starting with the introduction of Dassault System. So I will take 5-10 minutes to explain the company strategy. Then we will spend more time on the 3D Expense platform and the notion of model-based enterprise. That's one of the strategy that we are carrying with the platform, and that's the strategy that supports the collaboration across silos, across disciplines, helping companies to improve productivity. And the last point, we will go through a few customer study to give you more tangible example, and hopefully each of you can relate in your respective business how this might apply to your company or to your department. So a few words about Dassault System, because the topic today about breaking silos, it's something that Dassault System has been doing since its creation in early 80s. Dassault System was actually the first company to bring CAD software to market, a product called CATIA that was used mostly for defense programs. They created a spin-off called Dassault Systems, and since then they've been breaking silos in some major breakthrough that they had with the industry in late 80s, early 90s, with Boeing mostly, having a full digital mock-up of an airplane, very complex assemblies, very large number of data and parts, and you could only achieve this type of breakthrough if you break the silos and if you consolidate disciplines. Then another big one in late 90s with Toyota and the launch of product lifecycle management, which also aimed at enabling collaboration, breaking silos, and increasing productivity. So really, this type of transformation are at the core of what the system does. And the latest breakthrough and the latest transformation that we carry are around what we call the 3D experience platform, which is the main strategy of the system now, which is basically to consolidate all of our technology onto one single simplified platform, which means that all of the departments across the organization, whether you are from engineering, from manufacturing, from servicing, to have access to the same data with the same maturity of data, the same status. Okay, so that's what I will elaborate a bit in the next few slides. So the strategy behind the 3D experience platform is really simplification and collaboration. So how do we aggregate all the relevant data coming from different organizations, and how do we make sure that multiple disciplines around engineering can collaborate? So we have 4 key domains. One around the 3D modeling. So of course you might be familiar with it, whether we are talking about mechanical engineering, electrical, or even software modeling. So we basically consolidate all of the disciplines. We have domain around simulation and execution. So simulation such as structural simulation, thermal, radio frequency, or this type of advanced performance validation. We have tools that support analytics and what you call information intelligence. Because the next thing you do once you aggregate a lot of data, you want to make sense of this data. And finally, collaboration, which are applications such as PLM that allows you to collaborate across the organization. So behind the scene of this platform, of course, there are some famous brands. Actually, out of the 12 brands here, half of them are market leader. You're certainly familiar with SOLIDWORKS. CATIA is another type of modeling applications. We've got others. So for each of these domains that I've named, we have family of applications. So you see it as a big toolbox, and customer can choose what are the applications that they need. So you don't necessarily need to have a full-fledged of this product. You just pick what are the features that I want to activate on this platform. So it's very flexible, because we often have customer, when we talk about platform enterprise solution, that tells us, well, but I'm not sure, but maybe it's too big for us. Well, the message here it's based on application. You select what is needed, and it's available either on the cloud or on premise, which means on the cloud is turnkey, right? You subscribe, you get access to the application. So each of the industry that we work with, and I know there are a lot of attendees today that comes from this industrial equipment segment. So we basically have specific package that also are specifically tailored for dedicated industries, because each company will have different usage of the platform. So coming from a SolidWorks angle, because some of you are certainly more familiar with this application, what we are doing is we are connecting existing SolidWorks user on the platform. Of course, we are the only company who can do that because it's part of our family, and we have a connector who basically will allow all the SolidWorks user to access the platform and benefit from all the other applications that are available on the platform. And I will highlight a few. So in terms of industry presence, we work across 11 different industries with market leaders in these different industries. So here's just a snapshot to give you an idea of those that are public references. But later in the presentation, I will give you more tangible case study with presentation of some of our use cases. But just to give you a few numbers, worldwide we serve more than 25 million users. Now, I would like to develop a bit more on the platform and the notion of model-based enterprise, because really model-based enterprise is what will support collaboration. So in other words, breaking silos, and what will support the gain in productivity that we are looking for, which is the main topic of our presentation today. How do we achieve that 30%? Well, we start with something simple, breaking the silos. This is so common in most companies. Companies have silos of application, silos of departments, but product complexity is increasing, so it's not helping. Typically, in an organization, you will find a CAD system with a certain user interface. You will need to train people with a skill set on that particular application. Then you will have another application for simulation, another one for manufacturing, another one for PLM, each with different UI, different data model. They don't talk to each other, which results in exchange of files, which result in a lot of time spent on searching the information. So if we just focus on that for a moment, and we address that very topic, the platforms, the 3D Expense platform is basically about simplifying that landscape. All of the domains that I've named are all available on one user interface with one data model, which means that there is no file exchange, there is no format issue. And basically, a user will just pick what are the tools, what are the applications in their different domains, let be electrical, let be system engineering, simulation, or simply managing project, managing data. You will just pick the applications that are relevant to your organization. So by just simplifying that landscape, reducing what we call non-value added task, basically in simplified language, time wasted. If we remove time wasted by just simplifying the IT landscape, we have a typical gain of 30%. As simple as that. Now, if we go a bit more in detail of where else could we improve? Well, behind the platform and behind the model-based enterprise, there are two principles. One is moving from traditional file-based to what we call data-driven approach. So file-based, everyone knows it. You have a Windows folder on which you save files. You might have duplicated files. You might have large volume of files. And managing that complexity, of course, is increasing. But we usually will find you usually will spend quite some time to retrieve the data. Well, today, a lot of solutions such as PDM, for example, will allow you to consolidate the data, right? So you have a data-driven approach where not only you save PDF files, but you can save metadata, right? So simple definition of metadata would be who created that file, when, for what project, what is the version of this file, etc., etc. Right? So the data-driven approach is what will allow you to ease, I will say, processes. The second fundamental approach, and here we are the only company today that provides it with such a wide spectrum, is what we call the model-based approach. So not only we are indexing files, but we are also unifying the model, which means that if you are designing a product across different disciplines, again, typically mechanical, electrical software, or even if you are doing some simulation, engineering simulations, the model-based approach will allow you to do it with one single model on one single platform. Unlike static designs, which are files that you save and that you need to exchange, right? With format issue, with a lot of limitations, right? So these two principles we will develop a bit more, but they are very important because they are the two fundamentals to achieve model-based enterprise and to achieve gain in productivity. Let's take an example, very common. We have customer here that have 3 different engineers, one mechanical engineer working on the SolidWorks desktop, then you have a simulation engineer working on Abacus, and another engineer working on Hypermesh, right? 3 different tools. Typically what happens, if you have a PDM, you will basically check in your part, check it out when you have to work. So there is some data exchange and effort to do that. In parallel, you will try to document your activities with other type of document, Excel spreadsheet, PDFs, you will send emails, right? This is so common in a lot of companies, typical way of working, right? And if we take the example that we had here, for a certain design with request for iteration across the different roles, it's about a 16-hour job and about 256 actions, right? These are important number because the more action, logically, the more time spent. So the big change on the platform is there are a few. First, there is no more exchange of files, right? The model that they are all working on, the engineering model they are all working on, is one model. And you will access this model with relevant application for modeling, for simulation. And all the side information like documentation, emails on, okay, what are the change to be made, what are the action, to keep traceability, because that's very important for company. I want to keep traceability of the changes. All of this is also captured in the platform. And here, in that very example, why do we achieve 1 hour? Simply because it's the same person. We're using one engineer. When he opens up the model, decides either to use a modeling app, mechanical modeling app, or a pre-processing app, or a simulation app. One person does it all. Of course, it's not true for all organizations. It could be multiple persons, right? And then you can expect a bit of lag because you need to make the other person aware that she has to do the change. But fundamentally, no more check-in, check-out, no more I'll say maze of documents that flows through emails and other systems. So that's a basic example. Other example of what we call data-driven. How a company can benefit from having centralized data. Well, here we take the example of an equipment manufacturer. Typically, when you're an equipment manufacturer, you've got a large amount of parts from different suppliers, some that you manufacture yourself, but a large number of parts to manage. It can come from your CAD system, from your PLM, data warehouse, and ERP. It can be a lot of different sources. And typically, when an engineer works on a project, how does he make a decision? How does he decide what is the part to choose? What is the cheapest part? What is the one that is most commonly available, because some of our suppliers are delivering late? So all of these questions, how do you find the right information? And today we have companies that invest on third-party analytic tools with some very expensive projects to achieve that. But today in the platform, the search and analytics tools are fully integrated, which means that an engineer, instead of searching across system, will do one single search. We index all of these systems on the platform. You do one search and you retrieve the right information with all the associated metadata or attributes. It can be the cost, the weight, the availability. It can be a lot of different information, right? So having a centralized data, it's critical if you believe that the volume of data in your organization has become has reached a certain size, and that we can reach improvement on productivity. The amount of time spent on searching information is enormous. An example this time more on the model-based topic. So how do we define, how do we achieve the model-based enterprise? Well, typically in a company you have different skill set, right, and different tools. When we talk about a CAD tool used by designer, we are usually aiming for the form and fit of your product, right? So when you are a mechanical designer, you will work on some requirements to achieve a form and fit, and this will impact, of course, manufacturing engineers, because depending on the form and fit, they will define how to produce it. And then you have other skill sets in your organizations that are more after the function. Same requirements, different goal. So a system engineer that works on the logical system, or even on software integration, or a CAE analyst that works on the performance of the product, their agenda, their personal goal are the function, right? So the model-based enterprise must integrate these two together, because if these are two important silos of form and fit and functions, and that's what usually creates all of these iterations, right? And there is significant effort, significant improvement to achieve here, just by simplifying this collaboration between form, fit, and functions. And of course, if you focus only on form and fit within the design activities, there is also a lot of discipline that can be consolidated, like again, mechanical, software, system. So all of this can be can also have significant improvements. So what are the key change that will happen in an organization then? Well, one very important concept is the concurrent engineering, which allow all the different disciplines, engineering disciplines, to start working in parallel rather than in sequence. What usually happens is a manufacturing engineer will start working once the design is released. A service engineer will start working once the equipment is commissioned. Right? So there is a sequential approach that is traditional in the industry. What we are enabling with a unified data model is concurrent engineering. You can start your activities much earlier in parallel, saving a lot of time on a project. Right? So that's a concept that you will achieve with model-based enterprise, which means that throughout the entire value chain, from the very first idea and requirement gathering, what we call upstream thinking. So it can be defining a requirement, having some sketching, ideation activities. So from that very step all the way till your product is running and you are capturing data, by the way, about your equipment, all of this is using one single product model. And all of the data is just linked to it. That's how we enable concurrent engineering. In other words, the design engineering will work on engineering BOM. The manufacturing team will work with the same data on the manufacturing BOM. Then you have service team that will work on the same data, the same model, on the service BOM. Same data, but a different way to structure it, a different type of information and documents that are linked to it, but the same model, which means that if you modify the design or if you modify the configuration, the downstream teams will be impacted by it. If I change my equipment design, manufacturing team will be aware because it's the same model. Service team will be aware because it's the same model. Okay, so huge improvement on productivity once you enable concurrent engineering, and significant simplification because it's one system, one model. Right, and the only way to achieve this is to consolidate the data and the model on the platform. So we have a lot of examples that if you are in a given organization, say if you work in design or in engineering, you might not necessarily see right away what can be the use case for other teams. But I can tell you, for instance, sales and marketing for a company, it's a huge spending, probably even bigger than the R&D spending. Which means that if we manage to give these teams access to the model, starting to build some marketing assets from very early stage, without having to spend a lot of money on for example, photo shoots for equipment. These are the type of gain that we have working on the same model across all the organizations. If you have questions about this model-based enterprise, so you have the chat window, don't hesitate to write up your questions. Here we try to stay at the quite high level, but we can go more in detail with you if you wish. So yeah, don't hesitate to write up your questions, and we will answer it at the end of the session. So a few customer case studies that I wanted to share with you, starting with Lippert. So Lippert is a company in the US. They manufacture equipment for the industry, automotive industry, such as RVs or trucks. They are SolidWorks user for many years, and they decided to go with a PLM project, very small at first, and they've grown over the years. But simple objective, I have a lot of parts in my assemblies and it becomes very complex. I want to simplify that. I want to obtain my final assembly faster, right? So connect their SolidWorks desktop on the 3D Experience platform and achieve, of course, beside the day-to-day activities such as time to load the data, etc. Overall, for the assembly, SolidWorks assembly, a 90% gain on getting that full assembly, right? Which is quite significant. Other example, Sricon. So Sricon, they do manufacturing equipment, and they do quite complex equipment involving electrical, involving software, and not only they simplify those activities by having one single BOM that covers all of this discipline, but they went a bit further, promoting digital twin of their equipment. Digital twin of the equipment meaning having the possibility to simulate how will the equipment behave in the factory, saving very important amount of time on factory acceptance test. If you can simulate the behavior of your equipment, and I'm talking, it can be very detailed down to multi-physics simulation, you gain a lot of time in commissioning time. Another example closer to us in Asia, so the same principle, breaking the silos. How do we consolidate all of the information into one single location? And how do we connect deliverables with requirements? For every requirement, which is no longer on Excel or on PDF, right, is in the platform, for every requirement, we associate a deliverable, and there is traceability. So at the end of the project, we achieve less design errors. What we have observed is in the industry, 70% of design errors appears at the end of the project, which is way too late. And that's usually what generates cost and delay. If you can identify it, I'm not saying there won't be problems. There is always problems. But if you identify them earlier in your life cycle, it's helping you to decrease cost and increase the productivity, right? So connecting digitally requirements and deliverables is one way to achieve productivity gain. Now I have two videos that I would like to play, two case studies. One is VSOC. So VSOC, they do what we call white goods, being mostly household goods, such as fridge, ovens, etc. They are based in Switzerland. So I'll play this one first, and we have another one, Susan, which is they are doing industrial trucks. Right. So in these two examples, we are looking at how this company successfully simplified their IT landscape and increased the productivity using the 3D Experience platform.
VSOC develops, manufactures, sells, and services household appliances such as washing machines, tumble dryers, dishwashers, ovens, steamers, so the entire range of white goods. We consider ourselves a leading manufacturer of high quality and innovative products and continue to set new standards in the industry. For example, new features in washing machines, such as the vibration absorbing system, which is an active balance compensation system. The biggest challenge in the premium range is to align innovation, quality, and costs. But the focus is always on the customer. The customer and the market have requirements that must be mapped in one single system. The 3D Experience platform gives us the ability to map these requirements from the start of development to mass production, and to manage the development of the appropriate specifications and models. Our products are becoming increasingly complex, and in parallel, we're growing into new markets, which in turn leads into vast product variance. With a 3D Experience platform, we can manage this variance and ensure the transparency that's needed. The 3D Experience platform provides the basis to build the virtual digital product, and all stakeholders are able to access the same data. Hence, different roles such as software development, electrical, electronics, along with mechanical, can participate in the digital product. Transparency is enhanced through the participation of all roles in the digital product, which accelerates the process and leads to better product quality. In particular, we were able to reduce change management by half by redesigning processes and the digital workflow. We rely on the 3D product to communicate to the assembly line and use CATIA Composer to create the work instructions. This has brought significant cost savings in the development.
From the user's point of view, the biggest advantage of the 3D Experience platform is the integration of the applications across multiple functionalities. This includes the CATIA user interface up to Engineering Central. With 3D Live, we have a platform where non-CAD users, for example a project manager, can always access current 3D data and navigate easily, even if they are not familiar with the structure of the appliance.
We have been using Dassault Systèmes products for 25 years, and a stable partnership is of great importance to us. The introduction of a PLM platform is a complex project, and it is essential that you can rely on your trusted implementation partner, and this was the case with Helbling IT Solutions. Digitizing is one of the biggest challenges in our industry, in white goods. With the 3D Experience platform, we have created a foundation that prepares us for the future.
Okay, so that was the first example for VSUG, and then I'll play another one, Susan, which they are designing and manufacturing industrial trucks. Meanwhile, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box. We will try to answer these questions later after I play that video.
수산중공업은 유압 브레이커, 유압 드릴, 트럭 탑재 크레인 등 건설 광산 장비 제조 기업입니다. 전체 매출의 70%를 자체 브랜드 수출로 일구고 있는 글로벌 기업으로서 세계 탑3 메이커로 진입하기 위해 연구 개발에 박차를 가하고 있습니다. 글로벌 탑3 기업으로 진입하기 위해서는 무엇보다도 차별화된 제품 공급과 타임 투 마켓이 중요한데요. 이를 위해서는 부서별로 이기종 CAD 사용에 따른 협업 문제 해소와 잦은 설계 변경 및 오류를 최소화하는 것이 중요했습니다. 이를 위해서 싱글 소스 포스피드를 도입하게 되었습니다.
일단 다소 시스템을 선정하게 된 가장 큰 이유는 신뢰였고요. 이미 국내 유수의 동종업계에서 다소 시스템을 선정해서 쓰고 있습니다. 브레이커, 크레인, 유압 드릴, 연구원 총 50명이 솔루션을 도입해서 사용하고 있는데 큰 변화가 있었습니다. 가장 큰 변화는 개발 일정의 단축이었는데요. 당초 저희가 개발하는 데 한 2년 반 정도 소요되는 개발 기간이 솔루션 도입 이후로 1년 반 정도의 기간으로 단축이 되면서 약 40% 정도의 개발 기간 단축 효과가 있었습니다.
협업 능력이 눈에 띄게 향상되었습니다. 3D 익스피리언스 플랫폼은 당해 플랫폼 안에서 각 부서 수정사항을 해당 부분만 업데이트할 수 있으므로 동시병의 설계를 통해 작업의 속도와 정확성을 향상시킬 수 있습니다. 또한 클라우드 기반의 최신 업데이트 데이터를 기반으로 작업하므로 최종본 누락에 대한 우려 없이 업무를 원활하게 수행할 수 있었습니다. 향후에는 협력업체들 또한 3D 익스피리언스 플랫폼을 기반으로 하는 협업 과정에 참여하여 디지털 설계를 기반으로 제작까지 이루어질 수 있도록 하는 것을 목표로 하고 있습니다.
과거에는 저희가 시제품을 직접 만들어서 제작을 해서 현장에서 그 테스트 결과에 따라 검증을 하는, 즉 시간과 비용이 많이 들어갔습니다. 다소 시스템을 도입한 이후로는 디지털 목업이라는 기능을 이용해서 미리 저희가 검증을 하고 시험을 하고 그 결과에 따라서 다시 재수정을 하고, 즉 시간과 비용을 상당히 절감할 수 있는 그런 효과를 봤습니다.
장차 생산 관리 및 품질 분야까지 확장을 해서 저희 수산중공업에 PLM 시스템을 확립하고 이 시스템을 중국 청도, 러시아, 태국 등 주요 생산 기지 계획에 맞추어 동반 진출할 계획을 가지고 있습니다. 우수한 R&D 인재를 영입하고 지속적인 개발 환경 업그레이드를 통해서 탑3 기업으로 발전해 나가는데 박차를 가할 것입니다.
Okay, so that is the end of the presentation and what I wanted to share with you today. If we have questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jerome, for the insightful presentation. So there are several questions from the participants, and may I pose these questions to you?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so one of the questions was that currently we are using SolidWorks for our 3D design. How do we link this to the 3D experience platform, and will the data integrity be intact?
Yeah, so over the past years, since we launched the 3D experience platform, Dassault System has been working on the development of a connector that will allow SolidWorks user to save and manage their data, and actually more than that, but at least save and manage their data directly on the platform, which will allow to collaborate with other disciplines like project managers, it can be simulation engineers, etc. So what it does, it's as a SolidWorks desktop user, you have a plugin in your interface that allows you to eventually reserve the data you want to work on, so then nobody can modify it while you are working on it. Do your design change and then save it directly on the platform, and you always have visibility on the latest model, right? So you don't create duplicates, and you don't worry about. And I think Susan mentioned it, about data integrity, because you know you are always working on the latest copy. But more importantly, it speeds up a lot collaboration if you have multiple designers in the team. So that's a technology that we call SolidWorks Power By, and it's available both on the cloud and on premise.
Thank you for the answer. There's another question from the participants today. It's how do we break the silos between engineering and manufacturing?
Yeah, so that's really linked to what I was presenting earlier, which is the concurrent engineering. Very often in the sequential project, you will wait for the engineering BOM to be released before you start doing your manufacturing BOM that will define the production routing and all of the production steps. And that's the traditional way of doing it. That's how a lot of companies are doing it. In concurrent engineering, what we are saying is, first, your engineering BOM and your manufacturing BOM, of course, they are two separate things because they are defined differently. The sequence are different. The type of information linked to an engineering BOM or manufacturing BOM are different, but the model is the same, right? So if you look at a screw, the screw used in the engineering BOM and the screw used in the manufacturing BOM is the same. The only difference is on the platform you are using a different application, right? Exactly like you will do on your mobile. And depending if you want to watch and modify your engineering BOM or your manufacturing BOM, you will open a different app. Both work in sync. So you have tools that allow you to compare, to make sure that when you are building your manufacturing BOM, you really captured all of the parts in your assembly, all of the components in your engineering BOM, to make sure you're not missing anything. If there is any change that happened, you have tools that allows you to quickly identify what has changed and how is this impacting your production. So you don't need to really wait the end of the project to start building your manufacturing strategy. You can start defining the routing, sequence of operation, load balancing, a lot of different typical manufacturing planning activities as your project is going, and not after. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Jerome. We have time for one or two more questions. Does anyone else have any questions that you want to ask? You can input the questions into the chat box, and Jerome will be glad to answer them. If we do not have sufficient time to answer your questions here, we will reply these questions via email.
So maybe I can add one important takeaway from the presentation here. Really, don't be put off by the word platform, right? And don't think of it as such a huge project. We have a lot of projects that start very small, where really we will try to help engineering team first, design team to manage their data. It can be done very easily on the cloud with only a few applications to start with. And it doesn't, of course, concurrent engineering is the end goal for a company to manage the model-based enterprise, but it always starts with smaller projects. And really, I invite you, don't be put off, don't be scared. Engage in a conversation with CCAD to at least see how it could apply to your organization, right? And it won't cost you much except time, and at least you can deep dive and understand a bit more about how to do that.
Hi, Jerome. We have another question. So does SolidWorks CAD plus PDM mean the 3D experience?
That's a good question. No, actually, no. These are different things. So I was mentioning earlier the two concepts about the platform, which are the data approach and the model approach, which are available on the platform. SolidWorks plus PDM means SolidWorks plus the file management system, which will allow you to manage the SolidWorks files with some level of metadata to understand for example, the release, who is in charge, etc. But it does not give you full-fledged capabilities what the platform can offer in terms of data management. It certainly does not give you the model base. And now, if we look more in detail into the PDM solution on the platform, we are more looking at the PLM level, right? So it's managing the data plus having workflows that allows you to manage your project and to manage the maturity of your data, right? On the PDM, the type of workflow you have are super limited, and that's why we differentiate usually PDM to PLM system. So on the platform, you can have some very basic entry PLM applications and some very advanced PLM workflows. So it's really flexible based on the apps that you choose. But no, they are different things.
Thank you for the response, Jerome. We have time for maybe one last question. If anyone has any question, please feel free to type down the question in the chat box. Okay, if there are no further questions, we have come to the end of our webinar. So I would like to thank everyone for taking the time out to attend this webinar, and I hope that you have learned something regarding breaking silos and improving productivity, efficiency. And of course, thank you, Jerome, for delivering this message. So that's all for today. Thanks.